Okay, so we're talking about money, and we're redefining the word money, and we're doing it in a way that's so close to what we normally think of money that you're liable to miss it and not notice that it's important, but it's actually going to be crucial for us, this redefinition. So our definition is going to be very circular. It's just going to be money is whatever money does, and so we have to say what money does. And we're going to have three things that we think that money does. We're going to think that it serves as a medium of exchange. This is the one we're going to focus on. We're going to think that it serves as a unit of account, and we're going to think that it serves as a store of value. Okay? These are going to be our three things. There's more things that you can say that money does, and you can put them into your definition too. Some people do, but we're going to go with these three because it gives us the idea. Okay. So the medium of exchange is going to be what we're going to think of as the core function of money, or at least that's the function that we're going to focus on. And that's just saying that when you want something, you don't have to find somebody that has what you want and at the same time wants what you have. You don't have to do a swap like that. This is called a double coincidence of wants. You want what they've got, they want what you've got, and then you can do a swap. You don't have to do that because you can go to somebody who wants what you have, maybe your labor, maybe your used car, whatever it is. They want what you have. You can make this swap with them. They'll give you something that you don't even particularly want in and of itself, but you know that you can swap that thing for someone else. That's the medium of exchange. You're just using this thing as a way to do an exchange. It is not something that you necessarily want yourself. You may want it for yourself. You may want to paper your wall with it. You may want to have a giant money bin like Scrooge McDuck. That's totally up to you, but you don't need to actually want it. You just want it primarily because you can do a swap for something else. Okay? That's our medium of exchange, and we're going to focus on that. But in fact, money serves other functions, and we should mention them here. That's the same thing. It serves as a unit of account, and this is actually from an economics point of view, like if you really think about it, like how we run our lives, this is a really important thing that money does. Like when you go to the shops and you say, what should I buy? Well, I've got a budget and I have to compare prices. How do you do that? Well, you can convert everything into euro, and then you can figure out which one's more expensive and less expensive. And we've all done this on Amazon and eBay, right? You go to Amazon and eBay, and the thing's coming from Singapore, and the price is listed in Singaporean. I don't know, we got people here from Singapore. Someone will tell me what your currency is. But it's not euros, right? And so you have to convert from their currency into something, because you want to compare that, the thing that you might buy from Singapore, from the thing you might buy from China, from the thing you might buy from the US. And you say, which one is more expensive? Well, you need some way to compare those prices. And for us, it is convenient to compare them all in euros, right? Euros is serving as our unit of account, our way to compare prices. And if you think back to microeconomics, comparing prices was super important for the market system, right? It's got to be that if the price of something goes down, that you're more likely to buy it. And if the price of something goes up, you're less likely to buy it. And that only works if you can compare prices in some kind of meaningful way, right? And now, if you were doing barter, you can say this thing is worth, suppose we didn't have money as a medium of exchange. It didn't serve as a medium of exchange at all, right? We did everything just in terms of swapping, right? And you want to buy this thing, and that's going to cost you 2 comic books, and you want to buy that other thing, that costs you 3 sheep. Which is more expensive? Well, it's hard to tell. You need to compare them in something that's comparable. And sheep and comic books are not comparable. You have sheep, you got comic books, you can do either one of those swaps, but you don't know which one's more expensive. And so it's nice to have a common way to compare prices so that you can compare the prices, right? Now, this seems, yeah, obviously, and indeed, yeah, obviously, but it is something that money does for us. And it's something actually that's important that money does for us. Serves as a way to compare the prices. And in fact, we could, in principle, do all of our exchanges in euro, but compare all of our price in British pounds. There's nothing stopping us from doing that. It's convenient to have them both the same, but it's not necessary. We just need some way that we can compare prices in order to make sense of what costs more and what costs less. We do that in euros, conventionally, locally, here, right? Very famously, though, in prisons. It was like after World War II, like everyone and their brother went off to fight war. And so some of them ended up in POW camps. And some people ended up in POW camps, and then they sort of, oh, what's going on in the POW camps? And they studied POW camps and how the economy of POW camps worked. And it was cigarettes that served as money. That is, even if you didn't smoke, if someone wanted to pay you in cigarettes, you would accept cigarettes for that because you knew you could pass cigarettes on to someone else. Cigarettes was serving as a medium of exchange. It was a way to compare prices. This is worth 3 packs of cigarettes. This is worth 2 packs of cigarettes. It was a unit of account. So you can have lots of things serving these purposes depending on the situation, depending on the particular economy. Unit accounts, actually important, but we don't really think about it because it is so ingrained in us. You just compare prices in euros, right, and you're done, right? All right. And the last thing that we're going to think about money as doing is serving as a store of value. So for example, you can work and they pay you in euros, and that's a medium of exchange. They're giving you euros in exchange for your labor. You don't particularly want the euros. You want to go spend it and buy, top ramen or something, and you don't have to find somebody who wants your labor who has the ramen. You can get the money, and you can pass the money on. So money is serving as a unit of a medium of exchange in that situation. But another thing you can do is once you get paid, you can put that money aside, and you can wait 6 months and go on vacation with that money. And so you have stored up your labor value. For 6 months, you've stored that value that you created, and then you're using it 6 months later. Okay? So there's this time dimension to money, this way that we, in practice, use money as a way to get the value of things, the value that we created to spend it later. And this is an important thing that money does. Now, there's lots of other things that do the store of value well. In fact, better than money, as we'll see. But this is one of the things that money does for us, right? Okay. So we are going to think of money as being anything that serves these functions. Anything that does this is going to be called money. And this is crucial. So it's not just going to be notes and coins. It's going to be anything that does these services for us. And of course, this is very, very dependent on the society you're living in, right? If you're living in a POW camp society, cigarettes are money. You use them as a medium of exchange. You use them as a unit of account. You use them as a store of value. Cigarettes are money. Okay? And here, cigarettes are not money, right? Or not very good at being money. Like if you say, like a cup of coffee, I've got some cigarettes. Would you accept my cigarettes for a cup of coffee? At the coffee shop there, they're going to look at you like you're insane, right? There are certain circumstances where that swap is going to work, but by and large, people don't accept cigarettes as a medium of exchange in our particular society at this particular time. Right. Okay. So I would like you to listen to this Planet Money episode. This is a podcast. I think it's like 20 minutes or so. It's not like a big deal, and it's reasonably fun as you're on the bus. Or, as economics is fun. It's not like it's economics, but it's a story about how in Brazil this understanding of these 3 functions of money allowed them to rescue the country from hyperinflation. So really super high inflation, 1,000% inflation per year. They managed to save the country from that by fully understanding what was going on with these 3 functions of money. And in particular, understanding what's going on with the unit of account. The knowledge that money serves as a unit of account allowed them to do actual practical things, like big things. Okay. Okay. So we can think about things as money. So I have been told, and I am not an expert on ancient Irish history, but I have been told that back in the day, in Ireland, ancient days, cattle served as money. That is, people used them as a medium of exchange. They used them as a unit of account. They used them as store of value. And I think when they say cattle, that's a translation issue. I think it's more like sheep, but I don't know. So suppose we had an economy. Suppose my mythical ancient Ireland was true. I don't know if it is or not. Where they're using these things. How good is a sheep as money? Well, you can form a society around having sheep as money. Right? We actually have plenty of examples of these in real life where they use livestock as money. Well, clearly it would be difficult today, right? You take your sheep on the bus and all so you can pay for lunch later. It's a bit weird. But in a society where everybody has a few sheep anyway, it's less problematic, right? In a society where you don't have to transport things, you don't have to go buy from strangers across town every day, then you can say everyone knows how many sheep you got, and you can do a swap with the sheep. That's easier, right? So it is in fact possible to use them as a medium of exchange. They work okay for large things. You're buying a house, I'll give you 50 sheep. Works okay. Even if you don't want sheep, 50 sheep has a value, and you can use it to buy goats or whatever it is that you want. I don't know you in your life, but apparently you like goats. Goats are not likable, I'm just saying. I haven't grown up with goats. Anyway, the baby ones are very cute, though. So you could, in fact, do it, but you can imagine lots of things that would be inconvenient to use sheep as a medium of exchange, right? How are you going to buy chewing gum anyway? Right? Chewing gum is worth a lot less than a sheep, so it's hard to make change. I mean, you could cut off a foot of the sheep and but that's just cruel and mean. So, small transactions are going to be difficult with this. It's only really useful as a medium of exchange for large transactions, right? It also has some other troubles as a medium of exchange because euros are euros, but all sheep are not the same. Some sheep are young and healthy. Some sheep are old and sick. Some sheep are nice and go where you tell them to go. And some sheep are stubborn and ornery and nasty and knock you across the barn. So a sheep isn't a sheep isn't a sheep. And so all of a sudden you have to even if you don't want sheep and you're like a dentist and you don't want to be involved in sheep in any way, if people are paying you in sheep, you got to learn about sheep because otherwise you're going to be passed off all the nasty sheep with sicknesses and stuff. So you got to know which ones are nice and which ones are sick and which ones are healthy. That's a lot of knowledge that you don't have to have when you have euros. And also as a unit of account, this is problematic as well because, again, a sheep isn't a sheep isn't a sheep. So you have to have some kind of mythical average healthy sheep as sort of your unit of account. And then you're paying in a sickly old sheep, and that's not worth as much as a healthy normal sheep, and so on and so forth. So it's problematic and difficult, but it is possible, and societies have had this as their money. Now, clearly, these are primarily societies where they don't do lots of exchanges every day like we do, right? Where these kind of exchanges are more rare, and mostly you're self-sufficient, and mostly you're swapping with your neighbors, but occasionally you're buying something large, and then the sheep works fine, right? So it really is society dependent how big a deal it is to have sheep as your medium of exchange versus other things. Google Drive, that's nice, nice. Like how these guys think they're the boss. Well, they probably are the boss. They own us. What can we do? Okay. Sheep, on the other hand, are really good as a store of value. Not great, because if you just leave a sheep alone, he dies, so you have to put some work into. But sheep pay interest. You have a bunch of sheep, end of the year, you have more sheep than when you started, right? Baby sheep. So that is a nice feature of sheep as money. They kind of work okay as a store of value. Not perfectly, because if you're a dentist, all of a sudden you're taking care of sheep, so that's a problem. But if you're into sheep anyway, hobbies, everyone's got hobbies, then you get interest on sheep, and that is a lovely thing, and in that way it is actually better than euros, right? Because euros, you leave them under your bed, you got the same number of euros at the end of the year. Sheep, you leave them under your bed, you sleep terribly, but at the end of the year you have more sheep than you started with. That's lovely. Okay. So here, in this section, and this is like a two-lecture section here, I want to give you a brief history of money. And you should be thinking of this history of money in kind of a Mel Brooks history of the world kind of way. This is going to be a couple of lectures that have truthiness about them, but if we push any of the facts really are more complicated than I'm going to say. But there's give you a feel for where we've been over the last 5,000 years in the world of money. Right? And the point of this is, first of all, so you know, right? That's good, but also to realize how new and weird the world we live in now is compared to history in general. The world we live in now, money as we know it, is 50 years old. Nothing before 50 years ago, nothing before, 1972, is at all the same as what we've got now. So everything is, 5,000 years of history. We got 50 years with this newfangled money. We grew up with it. It feels normal to us, but in fact, it is new and weird. Okay. So, back in the day, people, little tiny villages, and again, we're in the world of truthiness here because, no written records back in the day when it's just, nomadic tribes and whatnot. But as far as we can figure out from looking at our current nomadic tribes and little villages and stuff, you start out your family units and whatnot, really extended family units. And I lost the camera. I was so scared I was going to lose the camera. I lost the camera. Oh, man. It's always the way. Okay, let's get the camera back. Okay, so you're in little family units, and there's no real need for money, right? Because everyone's kind of self-sufficient anyway. And so, you just do the swap, and you find the double coincidence at once. There's not that many things that are being made anyway. But everyone's using the same goods, and so you can almost always find a double coincidence at once, and you don't really need money as a medium of exchange, so it wasn't a thing. But then as societies get larger, as they get to villages and interpersonal conflicts, and you can't just trust your neighbor to take care of you in the day, and you start meeting people that you never met before, as we start having little towns and stuff, money very quickly arises. And the earliest money is what's known as commodity money. This is something that is serving the functions of money, but is also useful in and of itself. So the sheep, for example, in my little made-up story about ancient Ireland, the sheep are commodity money. People mostly wanted sheep because they wanted sheep. But also you might accept a sheep so that you could pass it on to someone else, right, as a medium of exchange. So it's something that's used in society, maybe depending on where you are, and we can find lots of societies now with commodity money. It's something that's useful in itself, and you're using it as money. So the prisoner of war camps are using cigarettes. Those are a commodity money. A lot of people do like to smoke, so cigarettes have value in use, but also they get used by money, so even that people who don't smoke would accept cigarettes in payment. Right? And lots of societies go on for quite a while with commodity money. The good side about commodity money is that it's nice to have, and you don't have to have this whole separate thing that's serving as money. You're using this thing anyway, right? And so, yeah, you got a bunch of it, and you're using it as a store of value. You're using it as a medium of exchange. You're counting up costs in sheep and whatnot, but you're also using it as a thing. The downside of commodity money is several. Is one, lots of commodities, lots of things that end up being used as money aren't very good at being money. So, for example, the sheep. It's very hard to buy small things with a sheep. It comes out naturally because in the early societies, all you really want the money for is making large purchases, and all your daily life stuff is barter and self-sufficiency. And so only the large purchases get made with sheep, and so it doesn't matter that you can't make change for sheep. And everyone knows all about sheep anyway, because it's a sheep-based society. And so that's not a problem. But as society gets sort of more complicated and perhaps you want to make smaller transactions, that becomes really problematic. Right? Now, that's why, of course, sometimes you will get these commodity monies where they're in small units, like cigarettes, and then you can do the small transactions and you're okay. But a lot of times what grows out of sort of naturally is that we get these commodity monies that are relatively large things, because money is important early on, mostly for making the large transactions, not so much for the small transactions, which you just, you make a deal with Joe, like normal folks. Okay. So after, like there's no like historically vaguely after, but different societies go through different periods. In the 30s, we were using pounds and dollars and whatnot, and then people went to the prisoner of war camps and they went back to commodity money, right? So it's not a linear progression kind of thing. But as societies get larger, as you're meeting more strangers, as you're making more, there's more specialization, so there's more small things to buy, and you're not making them yourself, you're buying the small things from people, you need money that's sort of more divisible. And commodity has another trouble in that you want this thing in and of itself, right? And so suppose, for example, that it's a rough year, and you're thinking that, I'm not sure that the harvest is going to come in, and we're very worried. Well, you're going to keep your sheep just because you want to have the sheep. And so that means that sort of the money supply, the amount of sheep that are being traded back and forth, goes down in bad times because you want the thing in and of itself, right? And the fact that you want the sheep just to do transactions means that people are going to hoard sheep just to do transactions. So if you're a little bit rich, you won't sell your sheep. You'll want to be able to do transactions. And so in bad times, those sheep aren't on the market, and people starve, and it's not good, right? And so because it's having the two uses, one use as money, one use as sheep, they can be in conflict with each other, right? And so pretty much as societies get larger, when you start to have little cities and you have empires and tiny kingdoms and all of that kind of thing, you move over to metallic money. Okay? And metallic money, you'll notice I have it in quotes. It doesn't have to be made of metal, but because most of us, kind of from a Western European background, and we played too much D&D in our youth, we kind of think of gold and silver as money. And so that's sort of what you have in mind, is gold and silver as money. But other societies have used jade, for example, as metallic money. Obviously, jade isn't metallic, but we still call it metallic money. It's a bit of a jargon, right? So metallic money is something that doesn't really have a use in daily life, but is used as money. Okay, so it's something physical, something reasonably rare, but common enough that there can be a bunch of it out there, that we decide to use as money, and it's not really used in daily life. And that's the difference between commodity money and metallic money. It's not the nature of the thing, it's that metallic money is something that's not really used in society very much. Now, of course, there's nothing that's not ever used in society, right? You can think about gold. Gold is used for all kinds of artwork and fancy things for kings, and these days electrical gizmos and whatnot. So it has lots of uses in real life, but most people, most of the time, aren't doing anything with gold in a way that they are doing things with sheep, right? So metallic money, it's kind of a gray area where you switch from commodity money to metallic money, but commodity money is something that's used in society all the time for other things. And as you move over to commodity money, it's something that's very rarely used in society. Okay? And metallic money is nice in several ways. One of the things that's nice about metallic money is that it's not used in society for other things, and therefore it's just mostly serving as money, and then the other uses don't sort of conflict with the uses as money. Right? You don't say, I want to have money, therefore I won't use this thing, and then it's screwing up the market for actually using the thing. Right? Another thing that's nice is typically one of the reasons metallic money arises is because you want to make the small transactions. And so usually I think every example that I know of is something that's reasonably divisible into small amounts. Right? You can have small pieces of jade, you can have big pieces of jade. You can have small lumps of gold, you can have giant lumps of gold. So you can divide it into small bits, and therefore you can use it for smaller transactions, which is important when we're in sort of a society with more specialization. So you have little proto-cities and stuff, and you have a guy who just makes shoes rather than everyone making their own shoes. Then the guy who just makes shoes, he needs to be doing all kinds of little transactions so he can eat. Like back in the earlier days, everyone was a farmer of some sort, and so the basic eating was taken care of by your own work and only for other things you need to like trade with people. But as you specialize in shoes, then everything you need for daily life has to be bought, and you need some kind of money that can be divided up into small bits just so that you can make those kind of trades. Right. And so metallic money rises pretty quickly as we get larger towns and cities and stuff. Right. People with me like stop me, like if I'm being weird or, well, I know I'm being weird. I'm always being weird, but we have to live with that. Okay. So, one of the troubles with metallic money, and this is particularly a trouble with the non-jade version, so now we're thinking D&D and gold and silver and stuff. Like if you think about gold as money, it is infinitely divisible. It is hard enough to find on its own, so you can't just say, gold is money now, let me like swamp the thing with gold. And this is one of the troubles with the Fallout games. Post-apocalyptic, they're using bottle caps as money. But bottle caps are everywhere. That's a terrible money because you just go out and you go search the wastelands and you come back with tons of bottle caps. You may have done it yourself. It's not useful as a money because you can get more of it very easily. Nice thing about gold is it's quite difficult to get more of it. And so, it's not just somebody coming in. It's actually one of the troubles with the discovery of gold in the New World is that Europe got flooded with gold and all the prices skyrocketed. Okay. So you've got this gold, and we're using gold as money. Suppose gold is our metallic money. And then gold is problematic because gold is really soft, right? And so what you've got is you've got this really soft stuff. You can't really carry it around because it will rub off on your pants, and then you'll have less than you had before just because it rubbed off on the cloth of your clothing. Right? And if you, God forbid, you put it in with other gold, they're going to bang each other about, and it's not really practical. So to make gold practical, you have to mix it with other metals, right? Okay. And in the jargon, you're mixing it with base metals, right? Because obviously gold is noble and kingly, and other metals are less so. They're base and unimportant. And we're thinking, I don't know the metallurgy, but tin, I believe they use to debase it. And that makes it stronger, and that makes it so you can, shape it better, and it will hold its shape. And that's great, but it means that when you get some gold, it's not pure gold, right? It's gold and something else. And so you don't know necessarily how much gold is in the gold that someone's giving you. Now, even in ancient times, they were very clever, and they figured out ways to tell, but they were all kind of a pain. And so for your daily life transactions, every time you want to buy a fish, you don't want to go through that whole rigmarole of like, let's get the volume of the thing and let's rub certain things on it to find out the gold content. You don't want to do that. And so you need some way to sort of tell how much gold is in there. What do we got next? Yeah. How much gold is in there. And so for this, government stepped in. Okay, so here's the first time government's even involved. Right? All this was just people doing swaps with each other up till now. But once we go to metallic monies, very quickly, governments get involved. And by government, I mean your local warlord guy with a big stick that will whack you on the head. That guy, right? I don't mean like, organized government and we're going to vote on it, right? No, it's the guy with the stick. And the guy with the stick gets involved very quickly. And why does he do this? Well, there's two reasons. One is very sort of altruistic. He wants a better society. If his society works well, maybe he wants the people to be good, be happy, but maybe he just wants to collect tons of taxes. But if society is working well, then people will produce lots of stuff, and there'll be lots of stuff to take in taxes. So he wants society to work reasonably smoothly, and this is a problem, this fact that nobody knows how much gold is in here. And so what he's going to do is he's going to come along, and he's going to stamp his face on the gold. It'll obviously be his face. We know it will. His face will be on the gold, and this is our first coins. You have a coin that has the sovereigns, the kings, right? His warlord. It has his face stamped there, and that's to certify, here's how much gold is in this. This is how much gold it is, and so you can see just at a glance how much gold you're getting, so you know how much fish to give the guy, right? And that's fine for small transactions. Obviously, if you're buying a palace or something, you want to actually check your gold for content because people are cheats. But for small purchases, that works fine, and that makes everything work so much smoother. So that's the beauty of the guy stamping his face on the gold, is now we know what's in it, right? And it saves a whole lot of rigmarole with testing over and over and over again. Okay? Lovely. Hey, that's a nice thing. Warlords are good. You should always get yourself a warlord. Very helpful. Now, one of the things about warlords is every so often they get into a war. You may have noticed with your local warlords. This is how they get their name. And so when you're in a war, it's very expensive. And typically what happens is you go along, everything's fine, you're stamping out these little coins, and then the war happens and you have to buy 100 helmets and 4,000 mercenaries, and you just got to do it. And you have these big expenses that come in all the time. Okay? That is true today when we have our current wars. That was true back in the day, ancient times, when you have a war, very expensive, and you really, really want money to hire stuff, right, to buy stuff. Okay? In these times, you're desperate for money, but you don't have any because you're at war, you're not producing anything. So what do? Well, one of the things that these guys would do is they would say, well, we're stamping out these coins, and each of these coins has 2 ounces of gold in it, right? And my little face is stamped on there. Let's take in a bunch of those 2-ounce coins, and then let's melt them down, and then let's put out some say 1-ounce coins. They're going to look exactly the same, but they're only going to have 1 ounce of gold in them, and the rest is going to be more tin. So we're going to put more base metal in here. We're going to debase the currency. That is, we're going to have the same coin, but it's going to have more base metal in it. So all of a sudden, every coin we can take in, we can turn into 2 coins, and we have doubled our money. Genius. Genius. You could be so rich. Right? Every time you take a euro, you can turn it into 2 euros. Would you not like that? Would that not be a good thing if I gave you like a little photocopy machine that every time you put a euro on it, spit out 2 euros at the other end? Would you not be happy for your birthday? That would be good, no? And same thing for your warlords. They discover this thing. They're not geniuses, but they do have a big stick. But they come up with this, and they all come up with this. This is everywhere. Right? They come up with this, and so when times get hard, they debase the currency, and all of a sudden they have a lot more gold, not more coins out there. Same amount of gold, but twice as many coins. And usually not twice, maybe 10% more. Right? They put out some more coins, and these coins have less gold in them than the old coins. But of course, people in their daily life aren't checking the gold content every day. That's the whole point of using the coins. And so for a while, they're accepting the same amount of coins for their stuff, right? And so for a while, the warlord, the sovereign, gets to buy more stuff. Okay? And this is called seigniorage. Seigniorage is this ability to buy more stuff by debasing the currency. By creating more money, you create this possibility of buying stuff. So you're not like creating stuff here, but if people have 3 coins and the government has 3 coins, then they're splitting the stuff 50-50 between the people and the government. But if the government turns their 3 coins into 6 coins, now, if people have 3 coins and the government has 6 coins, initially, the government can buy 2/3 of the stuff, right? And that extra stuff that they can get is seigniorage. Now, it's not coming from nowhere, because there's only so much stuff in my little story. It's coming from the people that didn't have the power to debase the currency. Okay? So one of the things that happens when those guys stick their faces on the money is they don't only stick their faces on the money, but they also make a law saying that if you stick anyone's face, but particularly my face on the money, if you make fake coins, I will whack you with the stick. And that is true back in the day. It is true today. If you try to print out some euros on your fancy photocopy machine or your 3D print them, I don't know how they do this, right? If you try to make more euros, that's counterfeiting, you will go to jail for a long, long, long time, right? It is treated by governments in the realm of murder. Like they take it really, really seriously. Like if you steal someone's purse, they'll go wrong. Bad, don't do it again. But if you print out 100 euros, God help you, you're doomed. You're totally doomed. They go down hard on this stuff, just like they did back in the day. Okay? Well, why is that? We can talk about today, and we'll come back to today. But fundamentally, back in the day, it's because of this seigniorage. The fact that if you put in less gold into this coin, you have some value, right? You can take a coin, turn it into 2 coins, all of a sudden, by putting in half as much gold, all of a sudden you're rich. And that's great for you, but it's kind of stealing from other people. Right? It's not directly stealing, but it kind of is, because their coins become less. Right? If you come up with your 2 coins, you can outbid the guy who only has 1 coin. And so you're taking stuff that he would have gotten, and you're getting it for yourself. And deep down we know this. Like if we had the ability to print euros, God knows we would, and we would print it out. And the reason we would do that is because we would get loads of stuff, and then we would get a fancy car, and we'd get a fancy house, and it would be lovely. But the houses just didn't appear, right? If we're getting it, it means someone else isn't getting it. And so there's a reappropriation of resources when you do that. Okay? Now, obviously, if I have the printing press, it's all good. My appropriating resources is a good thing. Your appropriating resources is a terrible thing. But as a society, we don't want people to, without creating anything, to just move this stuff around. And back in the day, when the warlords were setting up this system, they wanted to make sure, first of all, they wanted the money to be stable initially. Right? This is why they're doing it in the initial pass, is to make these transactions easier. And for that to happen, everyone has to know how much gold is in this coin. Right? That's the whole point. We have the coin, it's got the guy's face stamped on it. Now we know how much gold is in the coin. Right? And if everyone can mint these coins, we don't know that anymore, because we don't know how much Joe put into the coin. So they make it illegal for that purpose. But also, when the time comes that they got the war and it's very expensive and they want coins, they start debasing the currency, they start making more coins with the same amount of gold, then they get the seigniorage. And it operates basically like a tax. And we can think of it very much like a kind of tax. That by them printing out the money, by them creating more coins, that means other people don't have as much. That's very similar to the government coming and saying, give me 100 euros and I'm going to spend it. Right? It's not really different in its effect. Right? Exactly who gets affected can be different, but by and large, seigniorage is kind of just like a tax. Okay? Some special features, but kind of just like a tax. Now, the whole, not to get into it, this is basically what you need to know, but the history of seigniorage is actually quite interesting. So I know this guy, Shebnem Pamuk. He's the brother of the Nobel Prize for Literature guy. Orhan Pamuk. But Shebnem, is a economic historian, and he has a superpower. And his superpower is he learned the Ottoman language. And the Ottoman language is this dead language. It was like a big thing up till, 1930 or 1920? And then it's gone. We don't have Ottoman anymore. It's kind of vaguely related to Turkish, but it's also kind of related to Persian, and it's kind of related to Arabic, and they write it different, and it's just like you have to learn it. It's not like something that anyone just from their native language knows. He learned it, and it turns out Ottoman Empire was around forever, and they had tons of area, large chunk of the world they were ruling, and they wrote everything down. Like they were really into writing every little thing down. And so there's giant archives of stuff written in Ottoman that nobody can read because it's hard. But he knows Ottoman, so he goes into the records, and he finds that every time they had a war, they debased the currency. Okay? Not a shock, right? This is what governments do everywhere. They did it too. But the interesting thing is that every time they debased the currency, for 3 to 5 years, the counterfeiters would be putting out better coins than the government, because the counterfeiters didn't want to be known as counterfeiters, and they had to cop on that the government was doing their own debasing before they could do it. So, now, typically, counterfeiters put out worse coins than the government, right? Because that's the whole point. You take the government's coin and you put it in a little base metal, and then you're richer. Right? You take one coin and you make 1.1 coins out of it, and that's how counterfeiting is profitable. Back in the day, not so much now. Now you take a slip of paper, you print it, and it's free, and you get the money. But if you're turning one coin into 1.1 and the government's turning one coin into 1.2, you're actually putting out better money than the government is, which is what always happened after each and every debasing episode. Okay. All right. So how are we doing? Okay. So everyone's using, let's say, gold, but every place is different. And that goes on for quite a long time. Okay? A lot of times, small transactions were just sort of done with IOUs. Not everyone had gold. It's complicated, of course it is. But just think of everyone who's using gold, silver, whatever, as money. And then this is problematic. Because first of all, it's awkward to carry very much of it. Secondly, after the Spanish started getting tons of gold out of South America, there was just gold everywhere in Europe. It was just everywhere. So it became, you had to have a fair amount of gold to buy much. And for the aristocratic classes, obviously lower classes can't buy much anyway. It's not a problem for them. But carrying it around is a problem, right? Where do you store this? If you have a fair amount of wealth, where do you keep it? You have to have some kind of strong thing to lock it in. And you can't really carry it around because even with the base metals, it's soft, it's going to wear off. It's awkward. In D&D, you always come up with your bag of silver, but it's not a thing. Like that's an awkward way to go through life. And so what developed is people would say, look, I got a bunch of wealth. I need to keep it somewhere safe. I could put it under my mattress, but it's hard and lumpy. I'm not going to do that. And anyway, someone's going to come in and steal it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to somebody who has a big, strong box and can hire some guards. I go to a bank, right? And a bank, back in the day, was just an institution that would have some way to guard the money, right? So they get money from everybody, so now they can afford to have 24/7 guards. And so there, you put your money in there. And your money is safe. And you pay them a fee to do this. Okay? But then every time you want to buy some fish, you got to go to the bank because you don't have the laser card. So you got to go to the bank, and it's a pain to get your money. And so and then you have to carry that all around town. And so what the banks do is they issue you a note. They just write a note saying, Allied Irish Bank, an honest corporation. I say, if anyone brings me this paper, I'll give them some gold. Okay, here, I'll give them 2 pieces of gold if they bring me this paper. And they give that paper to you so that you can carry that paper around town, and you don't have to carry the gold itself. And because it's a big bank and everyone knows the guy, people will accept this note, this bank note, in exchange for goods and services because they know they can just take it down to the bank and get their gold. And that was the idea. Just, you don't have to carry it. Here's a note. Give the guy the note, and then he can come to me for the gold. But what ends up happening is people take these bank notes, just notes from the bank, and, okay, the fish guy takes the bank note, and he could go down to the bank and get his gold, but, that's a big pain for him, too. And so he goes off and he goes to the butcher, and he gives that same note to the butcher. And then the butcher gives it to the shoe guy. And it gets passed around 5, 6, 10 times before it ever goes back to the bank. Okay? And so now, these banknotes are being used as a medium of exchange. Everyone is thinking in their heads gold, but in fact, the exchanges are happening with these notes from the bank. Okay, I'll leave it there, and we'll continue next time.